Welcome to Municipal Affairs. Canada's capital was the center of attention for local governments from across the country. Over 2,500 municipal leaders gathered in Ottawa for the annual Federation of Canadian Municipalities Tradeshow and Convention. Now, this is a landmark event that brings together communities of all sizes. Among those in attendance were the delegation from across beautiful British Columbia, where we chatted with many of those in attendance about their reasons for being at the event and what they hope to take away from the FCM Convention. We first caught up with Prince George Councillor Cori Ramsay. Councillor Ramsay, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting. Got to start off with a simple question. What brings the beautiful city of Prince George to Ottawa for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities?
Well, like many municipalities, the city of Prince George is having some struggles with our downtown. The Ottawa Nightlife Economy Action Plan was a significant draw for us. Seeing the changes that Ottawa is implementing between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. To ignite some exciting activities and really make change in a downtown core is something that's of significant interest to us.
So what are the common themes that you're hearing, particularly at this convention, that can help your issue that you just laid out there?
I think collaboration with partners is such a huge piece of that. That was really the common theme: communication, engagement, having events, having things that draw people down to the downtown that aren't just one-offs, that are continuous. Those are things that I think are really going to re-aliven our downtown cores, which are all struggling across, BC as well as Canada.
It sounds like, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to ask the question that's going to put words in your mouth a little bit. Mental health, addiction, homelessness seems to be a hot topic at this convention. Are those similar issues that you're dealing with back in Prince George? And how does an organization like FCM help a city like Prince George address those issues on a both national and a local level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would be lying if I said Prince George wasn't dealing with the issues. We've been in the media over our encampment issues, and I don't think we can shy away from those conversations. We have to talk about mental health. It's been taboo for so long, and I think these issues have really compounded. When we look at provincial bodies like UBCM and FCM, there's significant advocacy that can be done at the provincial and the federal level that is going to have a direct impact in municipalities. And so not being here really means that we are missing out on the opportunity to I think push that agenda forward to make sure we're getting the support we need.
Are you hearing similar stories that you're hearing in Prince George across when you're talking with delegates from across different provinces?
Yes, as we engage and network with all the different delegates, this is the one I think beautiful piece about FCM is it brings communities together to collaborate on the issues that are shared, and this is really the mental health, the addictions, and housing issues are issues I think a significant number of us are encountering right now, and so hearing solutions, hearing ideas, hearing the trials, the errors, the things that are being tested that become tried and true in other communities, those are the things we want to hear about so that we can replicate or not replicate in our own communities.
And what do you take from here now? Because we're on day 3 of day 4 of this conference. You're going to be heading back to Prince George here in a few days. What do you do to ensure that the information you gathered here, the conversations that started here, don't end once you get on the plane back to beautiful British Columbia?
One of the common themes here is about sharing stories, and so I don't think the story sharing ends here. We have to take these learnings back to our home community. We have to share them with our council members and our directors who aren't here, but we also have to share them with our community. One of the things I'm such a huge advocate for is I write a blog. It's something I'm known for, and sharing my experience is on why do elected officials go to conferences? What is the value that they actually provide to the home community? And the value is so immense. You can't just step into this role and be expected from day one to know everything and run a perfect political career. You have to network with individuals who are just starting and who are just ending and who are in the middle of a long, a short, a medium length career, because they have such wisdom to impart, and I'm not going to get that just from staying in my home community. If you're not coming to these conferences and you're not hearing the great ideas, then I think you're robbing your community of the ideation that can really build and grow your communities back home.
So my final question is kind of a political one, but I feel like you're prepared for it because you're doing this so well right now. And from what I understand, you're first vice president of UBCM. What does Prince George get from FCM that it wouldn't be able to do by itself?
I think one of the greatest things, my mayor right now is really tapped into the Mayor's Border Alliance. The tariff issues are impacting everyone significantly, especially northern, rural, and remote communities. And being able to connect with, we've had a lot of U.S. mayors here this week sharing stories. Connect with us. Let's problem solve across the border. That is something that we are not going to get without being here at FCM. Making those connections is going to be absolutely essential to really coming through successfully at the other end of this tariff situation. Councillor,
thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure to get to know people like yourself, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again in beautiful Victoria for this year's UBCM conference.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Attending his very first Federation of Canadian Municipalities convention, District of Mackenzie Councillor Jesse Wright sat down with us at this year's convention to talk about his key takeaways. Councillor Wright, thank you so much for sitting down with me. We are on day 3 of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Why is it important for yourself, a councillor from the great District of Mackenzie, to be here in Ottawa advocating about municipal issues on a federal level?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm a big believer in these organizations that bring together communities like this, right? So UBCM, you were just at NCLGA a couple weeks ago, and then FCM's the biggest one, right? Because you get all across the country, and the issues that us as municipalities are facing are huge, but they're not always unique, right? So like what we're dealing with in Mackenzie, I'm sure there's communities in New Brunswick also dealing with it, and communities in Ontario. So I find first connecting with like-minded communities is important, just to see what they're doing and steal their ideas. And if we want to advocate successfully, we're much stronger together, which is the theme of the whole conference, right? And I didn't do that on purpose, but
sure you did. So what do you take back now? Because that's the big thing about these conventions, is you can go to all these conventions, but the taxpayer will go, what did you get? What did you bring back? Because you're using our tax dollars to go there. So what are you bringing back to the District of Mackenzie to ensure that the people feel like their voices, their advocacy work that you've been putting in isn't just going on deaf ears?
Yeah. So I think there's two big things that we get from these when you as an individual politician, when you attend one of these things. And the first, and it sounds minute, but it's not, is the networking, like the connections you make at these events. Should I be looking at you or the camera?
No,
me? Okay, sorry.
And that's staying in, dude. That's staying in the whole time.
I just realized halfway through I didn't know what I should be looking at. But yeah, it's the relationships you build, right? So the fact that now we just went on a tour of some urban wetlands with Ducks Unlimited, so now I have contacts with Ducks Unlimited. I met some FCM staff, and I met councillors who also are interested in that kind of environmental stewardship and that kind of flood mitigation and endangered species stuff. So now I have contacts, right? And I got their business cards and emails, hear what they're doing in their municipalities, best practices that I can then, again, steal and bring to Mackenzie. So that's I find that when even like the trade show, like you get to meet all these different organizations that have something to offer, right? That maybe, like I'm trying to think of one, I was stopped at a booth that was dealing with like overhead lighting, and we have issues in our community of people being mad the lights are too bright sometimes, right? And like they have ones there that you can dim. Like, well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that was an option, right? Wow. So you learn things that maybe we didn't know before. And then the second thing, and it kind of relates to that, is best practices, right? So you're learning what other municipalities are doing, and you can steal from them, and just learning who are at the forefront of these issues doing really exciting things, because sometimes we get so focus on our own municipalities, we forget that like other people are doing the exact same thing, and let's see what they're doing. So
what are those common practices that you're hearing about? Because the issues of the district of Mackenzie are probably a little bit different, but they're similar.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, like mental health addiction, homelessness, rural and remote healthcare. What are the big issues that you're hearing that are connecting municipalities in British Columbia like yourself, the District of Mackenzie, to a New Brunswick municipality, or are there any?
Oh, 100%. There's a whole bunch. The couple things that come to mind is, and we heard it with our keynotes yesterday, is the sustainable long-term funding model that we need, right? Like none of these one-off, like all of us municipalities are struggling. There's funding for one-offs, but there's nothing that's long-term for our structural challenges, right? And I think Mayor Sutcliffe put it quite well yesterday during his opening address. Is like we were designed 100 years ago, but we've never. I'm butchering what he said, but it's like there are funding mechanisms were designed 100 years ago, but then we've got problems that they couldn't even have predicted back when they designed a municipality, right? So that kind of like structural change, I know FCM's really advocating for that structural long-term funding to come to municipalities, right? So that's one thing. And then like I'll give you another tangible example of I was sat in a concurrent session yesterday about communications, which I thought was wonderful. So it was a smaller thing, but it's just learning like, sometimes when you're so local, you rely on what's been done in the past of like what are best practices for social media and Facebook and LinkedIn and getting messages out there, right? But then to have it literally a subject matter expert kind of tell you things, it just helps reinforce either A, challenges your own assumptions, or reinforces that, maybe the things I've been advocating for are good. So it's that kind of like getting backup for supporting your own arguments.
So my last question, and it's kind of an important one. Is this your first FCM?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So was it worth it? Because many municipal leaders are thinking, okay, is FCM worth the time to go out here, spend the money to come out here? From your perspective, as this is your first convention you've been at, do you feel like you're getting the value worth? And are you better off as a councillor today than you were when you first came to FCM?
I am 100% a better elected official today than I was yesterday, and I was better after yesterday than I was the day before. I find these events so beneficial, and like I understand the taxpayers' argument, but I think if we don't go to events like this and we don't learn what's happening, then we're fighting all these major challenges we have as municipalities with an arm tied behind our back, right? Because like, what other opportunity do you have to have all these like-minded people in a room together to learn from them? So that's 100% of value. And I think in order for long-term structural change, organizations like FCM, I'm from BC, so UBCM, I'm on the board of the NCLGA, as you were just there. Like, those are the key organizations because they can bring us all together and speak as one voice. Like I think it's 100% worth every penny.
Well, that's exactly how I'm going to leave it. Councillor Wright, thank you so much. I look forward to visiting you up in the district of Mackenzie later on, and hopefully we'll grab a coffee and then see each other in Prince George later on. Well, see you in Victoria in September, but see you in Prince George in 2026.
Yeah, that's a good. You're coming back, so that's good. That's a commitment. That's good.
I'm coming back to the full thing this time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Hailing from Kamloops, British Columbia, we had the pleasure to sit down and speak with Kamloops Councillor Nancy Bepple at the convention. Councillor Bepple, right?
Right.
Councillor Bepple, thank you so much for not sitting down with me. Councillor Bepple, thank you so much for doing this with me. You are here at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention here in Ottawa, Ontario. What brings you from Kamloops, British Columbia to the conference this year?
Well, this is a highlight of my year. It's a chance to meet colleagues from across the country, talk about common issues, find common solutions. And I think it's a double bonus that it's in Ottawa this year because the policies that we're really trying to put forward are ones that are driven by the federal government. So being in the same town as the MPs that are deciding those policies is a huge bonus.
So what are the common themes that you're hearing at this convention that you're hearing back in Kamloops? Or that you're dealing with in Kamloops, I should say.
So one of the biggest ones is housing. So Kamloops, like all across the country, has a housing crisis, and Kamloops is the third fastest growing municipality in Canada, so we know what it means to need to build housing. It's not enough for the federal government to say you need to build more housing. We work with builders, we need infrastructure, we have limited taxation, we need partners like the federal government to come on board to support infrastructure. You can't build houses without water, sewer, roads, and other infrastructure.
One of the big events that happened this week was the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, came and spoke to the delegates on day, if I'm doing my math here, day one, if I'm correct here. In his speech and even in his questions with President Bligh, he talked a lot about housing. Are you optimistic that this government will address the housing challenges in places like Kamloops, in British Columbia, across Canada?
Well, I'm optimistic that he and his government understand that it's an important issue. I know that it will be challenging. Has been in the past to deliver something that meets the requirements of large cities. Kamloops, I would say, is a mid-sized city, 100,000, and rural areas. I think that that's a real challenge. The Housing Accelerator Fund is a good example, which was the last government's policy, but Carney said that he's going to reenact it in some way. City of Kamloops, third fastest growing municipality in the country, applied for it 2 times and were turned down. So policies that are driven on grant applications that are oversubscribed serve some municipalities, some local governments, but everybody else is left in the dust. So
there's a concern that I'm hearing from delegates, and even when I was in British Columbia just last month, that the last government was about the Golden Triangle, the Vancouver, the Montreal, and Toronto. Outside of that, you get the scraps, quote unquote. You're in Ottawa, you're talking to your fellow councillors. Are you hearing the same concerns that you're hearing from yourself about, we have applied for the building fund twice, we got rejected? Are other communities your size across Canada getting that same response, or are you hearing different things?
Well, I think that what I'm hearing is just the frustration of the issues that they're dealing with, and they may be slightly different. I was talking to Mayor of Waterloo, and what they wanted was more transit and better train service from Waterloo to Toronto. That's not what we're looking for in Kamloops, although I love more transit. But it's just the whole way that the system works, that you apply for a grant, you find out 6 months later that you don't get it. Meanwhile, the work still needs to get done. And are we going to just keep taxing the property owners for new development? And now we know that they don't want us to increase the DCCs. So it's how are we going to get these things done? You can't just build housing. You need to build infrastructure to go with the housing. And you also have to look at all the aging infrastructure out there as well, because some of the housing is going to be an infill, right? So how do you upgrade the existing infrastructure?
So my final question here, and it's a political one, so I apologize if it comes out of left field, but what does Kamloops get from FCM that they couldn't get from themselves? Why is it important for Kamloops to be part of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities?
Well, having a united voice going to Ottawa and having specific goals that we want to achieve is so powerful. And if there were 2,000 municipalities coming to Ottawa with different messages, it would be really difficult for the federal government to build a coherent policy. And one of the strengths, if not the biggest strength of FCM, is they are able to get these 2,000 municipalities from 200 people to 5 million people to agree on common goals and work together in going forward. And that's just amazing that that's what happens. But having a united message to take to the federal government, regardless of who is in power, and we talk to all the political parties. So the same message goes to the Conservatives, to the Liberals, to the Greens, to the Bloc Québécois. Everybody hears that message of what we need to help work with them. I think that's what we get
What do you
out of
take
it.
home now? Because you're heading home here in about 2 days as of recording this. What do you take home to Kamloops to make sure what you learned here, what you gathered here, what you spoke to here doesn't just fall on deaf ears and doesn't go anywhere from Ottawa?
Well, I mean, I've been coming to FCM on and off since 2008. I take home renewed and new friendships with all sorts of local government officials. That's so powerful when you can call someone up and say, I have this problem, what are you doing about it? So ideas of how others are working on the same problem. So that's number one. Number two, the trade show, getting a few ideas to take back to staff and see if they help them. It's up to staff to see if they can implement those ideas. And third, we have all sorts of panels of experts. So I went to the policing panel yesterday. I take away what they've said, and it sort of informs me when I'm looking at what we're doing locally in terms of our police budget, is to hear what others are doing on the same issue.
Perfect. Councillor Bepple, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Chris. Thanks so much.
Now, for a rural perspective, we had the pleasure to chat with Cariboo Regional District Director Steve Forset about attending this year's convention.
Director, thank you so much for chatting with me. I was going to say sitting down with me, chatting with me today. From a BC perspective, from a district perspective, what does it mean to be at FCM in Ottawa this week?
It certainly gives those of us from rural British Columbia an opportunity to make sure our voices are heard. It is hard to do that amongst the agenda for the big municipalities and even the mid-sized municipalities. So for those of us just to raise the flag from rural BC and say we're important as part of the national conversation for local government concerns, and we just need those to be heard.
And what are you hoping to take back to Cariboo this week as you are? We're on day 3 of recording this, but what are you hoping to take back? And did you take anything away personally to take back to be a better director?
Absolutely. So certainly some of the learnings include how to get your voice heard in the local government discussions nationally and even provincially. How to have better relationships with your Indigenous neighbors, even just how to advocate for your infrastructure needs. So certainly a lot of learnings that I've taken away here in Ottawa and be able to apply those when I get back home to BC.
And what are those issues that you're hearing from locally that match up here in FCM?
Certainly, we have aging infrastructure. I've got a couple of sewer systems in my area that are approaching almost 50 years old. So like many of our rural municipalities, we don't have access to a plethora of money to get those replaced. So certainly making sure the federal government hears that we need those financial resources to upgrade those infrastructure, so water and sewer, to make sure that people have access to clean water and sewer where they live.
And you heard the Prime Minister speak earlier this morning. Was Elizabeth May, Melissa Lanceman's going to be here from the Conservatives, Gord Johns from the BC, the NDP. I was going to say BC NDP, but NDP. What did you hear from the political leaders that gives you hope that this is going to be a different era of municipal federal relations, or are you optimistic that it's going to change and pessimistic that it may not?
I'm certainly hopeful. When we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday, we heard a willingness of Ottawa to partner and work with local governments to make sure that they have the financial resources that they need to do to upgrade the infrastructure and provide that housing. And we know infrastructure is a key component to that housing file that the Prime Minister has said that's important to his government. And when we heard from Elizabeth May, certainly anyone who's, this is my second FCM convention, Elizabeth May has always been a staunch supporter of local governments and the need for the federal government to partner with local governments so that they can do what they do best on that groundwork.
So what do you think is the benefit of FCM for the people of the District of Cariboo?
Certainly being able to network with other rural local government leaders across the country. A lot of times you don't get those federal resources coming to provincial conferences, so certainly coming to FCM and hearing about those federal resources and how they can be applicable to issues back home, I'll be certainly applying those when I get back to BC.
Awesome. Director Forset, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We also caught up with Director Forset's colleagues of the Cariboo Regional District, Director Barb Bachmeier.
Director Bachmeier, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting about you being at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention here in beautiful Ottawa, Ontario. What brings you here as a director from the great district of Cariboo, Cariboo Regional District? I'm going to get that right one day.
Well, what brings me here? Well, this is a good opportunity to talk to people in power. You know, got to sit in on question period, and I had a good meeting with my local MP at the Justice Department there, the building. So, yeah, it's just a way to connect with people. It's more about connection and learning what they're doing and how that might be helpful for your community.
And are you hearing similar issues when you're talking to people, whether it be from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, that you're dealing with in British Columbia?
Oh, yeah. We all having the same issues. Lack of funding, inconsistent funding. The way we fund local government is just not sustainable. We're taxing the same taxpayer, and we don't have access to funding for sewer, water, infrastructure. We don't do roads in the Cariboo Regional District. We do help fund hospitals. So all of this adds up, and it's a community of voices helps to direct the federal and provincial government as to what our needs are. If we don't have the infrastructure built, how can we have housing? If we don't have sewer and water in rural communities, especially that have issues with the environmental impacts going on, and the fact that our roads are just crumbling and falling away, and the regional district is not responsible for roads. That's the province and the federal government. And when a road slides, it should be them that fixes it. And I've got farmers who are willing to drag out an old cat and plow a trail, but that's not sufficient either. So
what do you take back to Regional District of Cariboo then? Cariboo Regional District. I will get it right by the end of this interview. What do you take back to Cariboo Regional District then from what you gathered here over the last 4 days when this airs?
When I get up and speak and I say my piece and then I sit down and people are coming up to me with actual solutions or possible solutions to some of the issues that I'm raising, that's a good thing. And I mean, that's part of the connection. So if you're connecting with people here and they're trying to offer solutions, they may or may not work, but I mean, it's something to look at. Yeah.
Do you feel like it was worth coming to Ottawa for this convention?
Yeah.
Or that camaraderie that you're talking about?
It's definitely worth coming to FCM, because you get a...
Is this your first convention?
This is my second one.
So you were in Calgary?
No.
Okay.
I was in
Toronto?
Quebec City, I think.
Okay.
A while ago. Yeah.
So is there anything different from Quebec City that you're getting here now?
Yeah, actually, I'm finding that they're talking more about the rural issues rather than the actual city issues or urban issues. Where, without rural connectivity, without rural roads, without rural building, you can't get product to market. All of us in the rural areas of across Canada have the same issues. We don't have the funding, and I'm finding that FCM is actually talking about rural issues, which at the last convention, the last conference I was at, they weren't talking about it. They were talking about municipal urban things like transit. I mean,
You have transit, but you don't have buses and trains, but you have cars and roads, and that's your transit.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, most of the roads in the entire Cariboo actually are crumbling. They haven't been maintained for a long time. I had one road slide, and it was because the culverts were all full in a rainstorm. You know, and now that road's gone, and it's an alternate route from Quesnel to Prince George. So, yeah, it
So
just keeps going.
So my final question for you is, what do you take back when you get back to the Cariboo Regional District? What do you do with the information you've gathered here? Because there might be some who say, oh, it's just another political gathering where politicians get together and they party and they don't actually solve and they're just wasting taxpayers. How do you ensure that the money that the taxpayers spent to send you here is used correctly, and that the information you've gathered doesn't just fall on deaf ears when you return to the Cariboo Regional District?
I think the Cariboo Regional District Board of Directors has a fairly good understanding of what the issues are, and they're experiencing the same issues. So if I can come back with solutions, and there are 4 of us directors here and our CAO, and if we can come back together and say, look, you know, we spoke to these people and they have ideas for this. I mean, that's a positive thing, you know. There's so many, like the Tradeshow, for example, had a lot of things that could be solutions for some of our issues, and and ideas, you know. And so you bring that back and you discuss it at the board, you know, at some point.
Well, Director Bachmeier, thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Look forward to coming up to the Cariboo Regional District. Hopefully I got that right this time.
Yeah, you did.
And without looking at your name tag this time, let's put it that way. And I look forward to seeing you in Prince George next year for NCLGA.
NCLGA in Prince George. We have
And Victoria for UBCM.
Yeah, Victoria for UBCM. And I don't know if you know about the Keeping It Rural conference in Kelowna coming up next week on the 10th. But it's
I would love to have
2.5 day in Kelowna.
I would have loved to have gotten that, but I'm off to St. John's for that weekend. That week.
Too bad.
Sticking in the northern part of the province, we caught up with newly appointed president of the Northern Local Government Association in British Columbia and mayor of Smithers, BC, Gladys Atrill, to talk about her key takeaways from the convention and how her community is growing.
Mayor Atrill, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting about you being here at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in beautiful Ottawa, Ontario.
Thank you.
What brings a mayor from Smithers, British Columbia to beautiful national capital, Ottawa?
Well, I'm delighted to be in the national capital. It's far away from home, but it is driven by attendance at FCM. And when I was first elected, I had a chance to attend FCM, and it made a very big impression on me. The opportunity to sit by happenstance next to someone from another part of the country to talk about issues and realize how much in common we have, from the Arctic to the Atlantic to the Pacific. And it really touched me. And I've tried to come to this conference as frequently as possible since then. And I've made those connections here again. And it's gratifying. Lots of this work can be challenging, and to make these little connections and discover you've got colleagues across the country is, it takes a little edge off the job.
So what are those common challenges that municipalities like Smithers is facing that you're hearing here in Ottawa at FCM?
I don't think it's any surprise. People dealing with
housing, infrastructure.
Yes, housing, dealing with people who are vulnerable, homelessness, encampments, community safety, challenges with, achieving enough health care, even though that's not our direct responsibility. People who live in our communities ask us to help on these things, trying to make sure there's adequate services, advocating up. And whether you're in Smithers, BC, another part of BC, or in another part of the country, local elected are doing that job, trying to bring that story up to the people who can help. And it's the same. I was in a session the other day on people sharing, myths or disinformation, and hearing the stories from people across the country. It's like, that's a national issue. And so it lets you know you're not alone. that there's other people to call, and that maybe other people are finding solutions to help advance those, and it's nice to build out that network.
Are there unique challenges that Smithers is facing that you're not hearing here, or are the large macro issues that you're dealing with in Smithers similar to what you're hearing when you do that networking, connect with other municipal leaders, whether it be from the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic, or Pacific, Antarctic? Yeah, if I'm doing all my and the Great Lakes, are you hearing? No matter, even if you feel like it's a very unique issue to you, there is someone else out there who's going through the exact same challenge that you are?
I think there's way more the same than different. You know, the nuance of an issue might be different in my community. If, you know, we're trying to find enough resources to work on a road or to build a public amenity or to figure out how do we increase or make the best out of how we reach out to citizens. There's nuance in each community, and from time to time we'll have our own special issue. But it is about how do we get enough money to do the job. You know, earlier today I was hearing about the need to get those other orders of government to share the resources down with municipalities. We have the owner, like the lion's share of the infrastructure. We can't raise the money to build it out to what our communities expect. So there's way more in common, and the specific street or the specific hospital or the specific nuance of the issue, those are slightly different, but it's the same stories.
Now, you were just acclaimed as the new president of the North Central Local Government Association, which is an organization in British Columbia. They met recently in Prince Rupert. I happened to be there, and I heard a common theme that you just touched on, which is rural and remote healthcare. Mm-hmm. It is a challenge for Northern BC. What do you see at this convention that is helping address some of those concerns, or are you advocating to people on the FCM board to say this is what we need to do? Because you're the president now, and all the responsibility lies on you to make sure that your advocacy is not just provincial, but also federal when it comes to this rural and remote healthcare challenge.
Well, interestingly enough, in the resolutions series, that was, I think it was the first resolution, looking for that sort of level of support across the country for healthcare, including rural, remote, northern, Indigenous communities. So, you know, in my community, I'm not expecting the level of healthcare, all the amenities that Greater Vancouver might have, you know, where you've got several million people. I understand that. But on scale, people have to have some access to healthcare. And that might mean transportation to get you there. It might mean that the flight paramedics have to be adequately served. So there's different ways to tease that out. But what's not okay is not to have access, not to be heard, and to have your project somehow put down the list so far that I've heard myself say it, that won't be in my lifetime. And that's actually very depressing, you know. So in our community, we have a hospital very much in need of replacement, and I've heard myself say, I'll be lucky in my lifetime, and that's not actually okay. It's been on the list for a long time, it's very old, and it's not the only one. So somehow our common challenge is to figure out how do we share out those resources so everyone's moving along at a reasonable rate, so that we don't look at a remote hospital and say, oh, we can get to that in 30 or 40 years when it's already 50. I mean, our hospital is older than I am, so it's more than 30 or 40 years. So it's, and I appreciate it's super difficult, but we have our combined resources across the country. We have to figure out what are the priorities across the country so that the people who are living in rural Canada, and many, many people too, however you define it, are feeling the benefit of what happens in their backyard. So in our area in northwestern British Columbia, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of impact on communities. Okay, those decisions are being made. We must return benefit to the communities. Otherwise, we can't in our communities deliver the services that the people who are working in those developments are going to expect when they come to town. You know, we need to get water to their buildings. We need to make sure the sewer's working, that the roads hold them up, and that we can work with our colleagues and other jurisdictions to ensure there's adequate schooling for their children. and hospitals when they need it. It's got to be multi-pronged all the time. There's not just one thing.
So how do you see yourself as you're in your new role as president of NCLGA to ensure that commonality goes forward, that the next mayor doesn't have to say to themselves depressingly, not in my lifetime? Because you're right, municipalities are struggling today. They're not struggling 30 years from now, which they will be if nothing happens today. How do you ensure as president that the issues that are important today are on the provincial and national level? Is it coming to these conferences? Is it speaking up when you need to speak up? Is it what?
Well, I think it's all of those things, and I think it's building those networks amongst the local elected. And I think, in northern or north central or northwest BC, however we want to define that part of the province, we have started finding that strength of commonality where we've shared a message. Where the last time I met with a mining company, it's like, I need your help too. So it's very common for industry to seek support from local governments because they like to know they're welcome. They like to know that when they go to the powers that be, they can say, well, we're supported. And now the message is, we need to be supported. So if you want us to be able to support you, you need to support us, and it's going to mean a change in the landscape somehow. My colleague, in my neighbor to the east, the District of Houston, reminds us that once upon a time, industry used to build the towns. Well, we're not going to have that, but there needs to be a sharing of the benefit so that we can help deal with the impacts. We all love to think about our communities growing, but they have to grow well. People have to feel safe. They have to be able to enjoy their life, to have the experience, that when you come to a community, on balance, it's great. Yeah. It's not something you're worried about. You feel welcome and excited, and you've got things to do, and you land in a happy community. People are happy when they're healthy, when they understand all the things are there that they need. And when we live in small communities, we don't expect the same as a large city, but we do expect some things. And so we expect those basic amenities, we expect to be heard, and we want to feel safe. And I think our job, you asked me, what am I going to do? I'm going to find my way because it's a new role, but I'm not unfamiliar with my colleagues across the region. And we're going to try to find a common voice, pick those few things that we think are important to all of us, and try to advance those, whether it's through meetings with the provincial government, with the federal government when necessary, with other local governments to build that case and share the message and say, these are the things, these are the most important things for us, and we need your help on them now. To the province, to those who are working in our communities, it's going to have to be an all hands on deck.
So my final question, it's a political one, but I feel like as a political politician, you should be able to answer it. What does the town of Smithers get from FCM that it doesn't get by just advocating for itself? Why is it important for the town of Smithers to be part of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities?
Well, I think federations only work when there's members, so that's one thing. If you want something to be strong, you need to join, and you need to show up, and you need to contribute your energy to some level. I'm not an integral member of FCM. There's a lot of people here, but I'm living.
You are, though, aren't you?
For sure, because I am one, but I'm not on the board of FCM. But it takes all of us to chip in a little bit to give those that are on the board, that are carrying the big flag for all of us, to know that there's 2,000 people behind them. And so I think it's important to be there. Also, I learn things. I meet people, and our community takes advantage of the programs that FCM has. So we can apply for funding, we can take part in the programs. So it's important to be a part of it. If we don't join, it's not strong. And you only get to make things strong by showing up. You pay your fee and you show up. I think that's how things work.
Well, Mayor Atrill, I'm so happy that you sat down with me. I'm so happy that we got to chat. I look forward to meeting you again in Prince George next year for the NCLGA convention up there. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
From the district of Squamish, we caught up with Councillor Joel French, who was in attendance at this year's convention in Ottawa.
Councillor French, thank you so much for sitting down with me. We are here in beautiful downtown Ottawa at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Why was it important for a councillor from Squamish, British Columbia, to be here this week?
Wow, right into it.
Into it.
Okay, I'll answer that. First, though, thank you very much for your podcast and your work. I see it as connecting the country, and it's important, and I'm glad you're doing it. Squamish needed to be at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention because we are a fast-growing British Columbia community with a lot of issues, and many of them have tentacles that reach up to the federal government. So I'm here along with our mayor, Armand Herford.
So what are the tentacles that you're hearing about this weekend?
So lots on housing, homelessness, the tainted drug supply situation. Those are some of the big ones. Oh, and transportation, transit as well. And some of these are provincial responsibilities. However, all of these issues have potential solutions that reach right up to the federal government.
So what are you hoping to take away then? Because at the end of the day, you can't just go back to Squamish and say, I went to Ottawa, because everyone's going to say, well, that's the councillor, we're going on the public dime, going to Ottawa. So what do you take back?
It's mostly good ideas, Chris. There are so many smart people here, way smarter than me, with way different experiences and different solutions for many of the same problems. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, and it's really from everybody. It's from the speakers, it's from the non-elected people that are here, because everybody has got good ideas. Everybody's got stories of things that worked well, and probably even more importantly, stories of things that didn't work well that they learned from, and then we're able to apply that knowledge and that learning to come up with solutions that did work better based on those failures.
Now, I could be doing my geography wrong here, but I would assume that the district of your community is a little bit more rural than urban centers, correct?
Arguable.
How so?
Well, we're a fast-growing community. Are
you over 100,000?
We're 30,000, so we're quite a bit under.
The federal government, you are a rural community.
Oh, so yes, some technical for sure, but we are a fast-growing community. In 1999, we were 15,000 people. Today, we're more than 30,000, and so we have gone from being a very industrial community through, from pre-90s to a not industrial community. Our railway mechanical facility got moved to Prince George many years ago. Our forest industry still exists, but only just barely compared to decades past. We had a chemical plant at one time. We had active mining that has reduced almost nothing. And I wouldn't call us a farming community, but in the past we have grown things and we have done agricultural things, and that's reduced.
Okay, so you're a mixed-use community.
Absolutely, yes.
So what is the benefit of your community being part of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities? Because some people might say, what's the point of your organization? What does FCM give you that you couldn't do on your own?
I think being part of the conversation is pretty important. Now, I'm a former journalist, and through the 90s, I was sitting in those council chambers at the back taking notes, and then on the radio the next day reporting. And one of the things that I saw through that period was the District of Squamish had no involvement, no connection to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, well connected to the Union of BC Municipalities and very active there. And so when I became elected, my first term, I didn't do anything about that non-connection to the FCM. And then in term number 2, I really saw that was a big gap. And I'm here because I think it's important for us as the District of Squamish to have some voice up to the FCM.
When you're speaking to other communities your size across Canada, are you getting similar responses of the challenges that you're facing compared to what they're facing? Because one of the big things I hear at this event is networking. That's the best part about these events. Are you, when you're networking with them, are you getting those similar stories, or are you getting, your municipality of 30,000 is a little bit different than ours, but we're dealing with relatively the same issues?
Yeah, I would say similar. And I think one of the big differences would be whether I'm talking to somebody from a community that is growing fast, like Squamish, or a community that has had either negative growth or very little growth over the last couple of years, because those scenarios are quite different. For the folks that are living in communities that haven't seen significant growth. Prince Rupert is a good example. I was chatting with some friends. Mayor Herb Pond, I'll drop a name. He's a great guy, big character. And their population hasn't changed a lot since 1999. And so their struggles are a little bit different from ours, from a growth perspective.
Are you excited to be going back home and bringing back all the great things you learned to the district of Squamish?
I'm having fun here. I actually extended my stay through Monday because
of course you did.
I have offspring that lives here in Ottawa, so my primary plan on Monday is to spend time with family. So we're talking on Saturday lunchtime. So there's still all of today left and tomorrow, and there are some really great things on the agenda. Lots more good ideas for me to steal and take back to Squamish.
Well, Councillor French, always a pleasure.
Keep up the good work, Chris.
Thank you.
Councillor Sean Woods from Parksville, British Columbia, was attending and spoke to us about what he hopes to bring back to Parksville after the convention. Councillor Wood, right?
That's right.
Councillor Wood, thank you so much for sitting down with me at the last day of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. What does a city councillor from Parksville, British Columbia, need to come to FCM for?
Well, Stronger Together is the motto for this year's convention with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It both speaks to Canada being stronger together and also municipalities and local governments being stronger together, Chris. So we have a lot of needs at the local government level. Our provinces support us on some of those needs, but FCM specifically speaks to the federal government, and hopefully we get some of those needs addressed, mainly through a municipal growth framework.
Are you hearing the same concerns that you're dealing with in Parksville that you're hearing during these sort of off-the-cuff, in the middle of the hallway conversations, or as I like to call them, the true networking sessions? Are you hearing similar concerns that you're dealing with that all other municipalities are dealing with? Or to quote a fellow councillor who just came, or a mayor who just came on the show, do you feel like an island upon yourself and you're going, oh, we're unique in our challenge?
Getting down to the nitty-gritty of every local government, there's probably some specific needs to that city or that municipality or that electoral area or county. But in general, we're all being asked to build more housing, and we're responsible for 60% of the infrastructure, and we only get 10% of the tax dollars, Chris. So in that sense, we're all in the same boat. Yeah.
Where do you go from here now? Because you can't stop the conversations after you get on the plane tonight and head back to Parksville. What happens when you get back there? What do you ensure that the conversations that started here don't just end here?
Yeah, well, we saw President Rebecca Bligh have a sit-down with Prime Minister Mark Carney, and that's fantastic. That's the whole reason this organization exists. I love that Mark Carney made some time for Rebecca. I think that we're already on a strong footing with this new government. There are uncharted waters ahead with tariffs and international trade relations, big energy projects that both the province of BC and the federal government are going to try to push through so they can build the economy a little bit more resilient, a little bit more independent. And we hope local governments aren't forgotten in everything that's going to be coming forward.
From a local perspective, your local MP was actually on stage yesterday, if I'm doing my math here correctly. Gord Johns, the Member of Parliament for, I'm going to get the name wrong, so I'm not even going to try and get it right. What was it like to hear from him from that municipal experience? Because he has that municipal past experience, and now he's a Member of Parliament. There's rumors that he could be running for the full leadership of the federal NDP, but what was it like to hear him speak and have other delegates hear what you get to hear on a regular basis?
Chris, I personally like when an MLA or an MP or an MPP have run in local government, have been a councillor or been a mayor, because I think it really adds to their experience. And obviously when Gord spoke yesterday to all of the delegates, he was very relatable because he knows the boat we're in. Gord works his butt off in my riding of Courtney Alberni. I'm not holding it against you, Chris, because I don't know how many ridings are in your brain, way more than mine. So I'm not making fun of you there. And Gord works his butt off, and he knows the issues. And you saw with the standing ovation for Gord that he was hitting all the right notes. And he knows the issues that we deal with, and I think he will work his tail off here in Ottawa for local governments. So,
can I ask a very political question?
Yeah.
You're running for a board position, so
Sure.
you should be able to answer a political question.
Sure, of course.
What is the benefit for the city of Parksville to be a part of the Federation of Municipalities?
Yeah, the benefit is to have part of that stronger voice for the federal government. If we're going to get contributions from the provincial government, of course, there'll be some strings attached, and we'll accept it. The City of Parksville helps us pay for big infrastructure projects. Our pool expansion of $30 million. The numbers are a little smaller with the City of Parksville compared to other local governments. But if there's contributions coming from the federal level, that helps as well. Right, we're still gonna accept that. And if the federal government is asking the City of Parksville to build housing, if the immigration numbers are up there and they need more housing, well, we're going to do our part. We are doing our part. And if there's any contributions that are going to go to the municipalities that are doing their part, then we'll gladly accept those contributions. Yeah.
Are you optimistic about the future of municipalities after leaving, as you're prepared to leave Ottawa?
Well, like I said, when we saw, President Rebecca Bligh sit down with Mark Carney and have a conversation, that says a lot. It says that we're on the radar. I think in the past, I don't know all of the history of Federation of Canadian Municipalities, but I don't think it's been as strong as it is right now. And so that's very encouraging at the local government level, because you want to be part of a strong voice that's being heard, and I think we are. Yeah.
Councillor Wood, always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. Love the work you're doing.
We also caught up with Trisha Mandewo, president of the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. She joined us to talk about the importance of BC's presidents at FCM, the ongoing concerns around Bill 15 in the province, and how her team plans to carry momentum from Ottawa back home.
President Mandewo, thank you so much for sitting down with me at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. As president of the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, why is it important for UBCM to be here at FCM in Ottawa this week?
So you might already know that every province has an association of local governments. We all work individually within our provinces. So when we come to FCM, it's actually a space for us to get together and not only network, but also to share knowledge and to have that collective voice. We also sit at the board for FCM as the associations. So we are constantly sharing knowledge. But at the convention, it's even a bigger stage for us to connect even further.
So what are you connecting on as president of your organization? You're meeting with other presidents of PTAs across. You're meeting with Rebecca Bligh, the president of FCM. What are the common themes that you're hearing that impact BC that might impact, say, Saskatchewan or Alberta or New Brunswick? What are the common themes that you're hearing?
Yeah, so the common themes so far has been housing. But the biggest one that I'm hearing is the undermining of local governments, where you have provincial governments that are making decisions and more eroding the power from local governments, even though we are the ones that are closest to the people. And I often say, federal government is all the money, if that's when they are not in deficit. As well as provincial governments, they've got all the power, but local governments have all the problems. And I'll also add that we have all the solutions as well, right? So yes, it's very critical for us to come together and share what those problems are, what the solutions are, and so we can also collectively advocate, because we are stronger together.
We are stronger together, but in BC, I was just on a press conference that you and the First Nations of British Columbia put together around Bill 15. You talk about that undermining of municipal responsibilities. When you're here at a conference like FCM, are you hearing other municipal jurisdictions, whether it be different provinces, going through similar issues around, say, their own type of Bill 15 in their own jurisdictions, or is that unique within the BC borders?
Oh no, it's definitely not unique, because Ontario is actually going through the same thing. And when we say undermining, we are actually being nice. The right word is power grab.
You're actually saying a power grab.
I'm saying it is a power grab. Let's call it what it is, right? And if you listened to my messages or my interviews in BC, my argument was, on behalf of our members, the province has so many efficiencies that they need to work on themselves. But now suddenly they want to come and, override us and take more power, even though they're not doing what they're doing great. Why not work together? Let's collaborate, because we are stronger together. Even within the different levels of government, we are stronger together. Let's collaborate. Let's do what's best for our communities. But you don't do so by coming and just grabbing more power.
I know we're supposed to be talking about FCM, but I need to ask this question. Are you optimistic that Bill 15 will be overturned, or there will be a solution that will be beneficial to First Nations, to municipalities in the near future with the NDP government out with David Eby?
Optimistic? I would say no. You know why? Because the way that we all went to the provincial government, to the BC government, and shared our discontent or our problems that we saw with Bill 15, with all those people giving the feedback, I would have said they would have seen that and they would have listened and they would have either paused and go back to consult, but they didn't do that. They went forward with it. So to me, it seems like I don't think there's a willingness from their side to reverse it or to do anything, because they did have an opportunity to not pass it in a rush, right? So I'm not optimistic, but I do know that I'm hearing from the First Nations that they are going to find other ways.
So what's next? What do you do now? Because I think the spring session has risen for the summer, so that means they're probably not going to be back in until after your UBCM conference in Victoria later on this year. What do you have to do?
So for us, though, for local governments, as you know, they call us the little creature of the province, right?
Which is the worst thing to say to a municipal
we went to our father or our big brother, and we said, listen to us. And they didn't listen. And that's where it ends, really, because we don't have any other powers. The only thing that we hope for is for the other levels of government to listen when we are bringing forward concerns, to listen to us. But if they don't, really, we have no ammunition. There's nothing that we can do.
Getting back to the FCM for a few seconds, if you don't mind. You talk about housing. I'm hearing about mental health and addiction.
Oh yes, yeah. I did. We went on a tangent. I didn't get to listen
back
all of
to
them.
the original conversation. When you're here at FCM, whether it be here in Ottawa, in Calgary, up in Edmonton, wherever it is, how do you get those networking sessions where you get those common grounds, that stronger together? Oh, what's working in this community couldn't work in British Columbia. How do you get those common issues, find common solutions, and bring them to common reality to make sure that the people of British Columbia get something from all the municipal leaders from BC attending a conference like this?
So I'll tell you what my council does. So we all come and we look at the sessions that we think are going to benefit our community, and we go to our different sessions, and I take my notes, and if it's slides, I'll take my the slides, and when I go back, I actually report to council to say I went to this session. For example, I went to the nightlife one, because we're going to be building, our community Coquitlam is growing, and eventually we're going to be looking to have a nightlife as well. So I wanted to hear some of the best practices that Ottawa, has. I don't want to do the same mistakes that they did. So I went to that session. I also went to the homelessness session, right? Because we are having problems just like other communities. So we're trying to find if other communities have found ways to deal with this so that we can either avoid the mistakes or copy the things that they're doing right, so that we can just do the best for the people in our communities.
A very political question, but I feel like you and I are friends now, and I can ask you a very political question. But what is the benefit of UBCM being part of an organization like FCM?
We are stronger together, right? FCM is us. FCM wouldn't exist without local governments. So FCM is made up of all the individual local governments, and I would argue that it would be difficult to be in touch with every single member. So by having the associations in every province, now they have a direct line to a local organization that has the same members at the base, right? So it's actually an effective way of communication to where now they can communicate directly, or they can communicate through us as area associations, and the goal is to make sure that the messages get to the members and that we really do the best that we can for our communities.
So my final question, and this is more of a
final.
If you will learn, if you have not learned already, I ask a lot of final questions. Okay. But this is my final question because it's more of a personal one. You're coming up to the end of your term as a two-term president of the UBCM. President, how was it? Did you enjoy your time as president of your organization? Because I know you still got a summer, but September's right around the corner. Have you made the changes you've wanted to in the position you've been in for the last 2 years?
Yeah, so I wouldn't call them changes, but as much as for me, I measure success as did I represent the members well. And for that, I'll say I left no stone unturned. I represented the members of British Columbia, small, medium, large, and everything in between. And I listened to their voices, and I advocated as hard as I could. And I think that is a measure of success in this position. And could more be done? I'm sure. But you probably know, from the day that I got elected as president 2 years ago, I think it was literally maybe 2 weeks, we got a slew of legislation, Bill 44, 45, 46, 47, right? And I had to immediately go to the members and say, what are your feelings about this? What are you feeling? So that I can be able to speak for them. And that hit the road running. And I don't think it has really stopped for the whole time.
It does not sound like it stopped, but I want to thank you so much, President Mandewo, for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in Victoria this year.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being our voice.
And finally, we close with one of the major highlights of the week, the acclamation of a British Columbia City Councillor from Vancouver, Rebecca Bligh, as the new president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We spoke with President Bligh on the final day of the convention to discuss her plans for the year ahead and how FCM continues to serve municipalities from coast to coast to coast.
President Bligh, thank you so much for sitting down with me on the very last day of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in beautiful downtown Ottawa, Ontario. First off, you've been here for the last 4 days. You've been crisscrossing for the last 10 months. How has this culminated into this weekend? How are you feeling?
Oh, it has been a wonderful weekend. As always, as you say, we visit people in their home communities, and then to have everybody together in one place here in beautiful Ottawa has just been wonderful to see. We've had a very lively few days with workshops and plenaries, study tours, all on the topics of municipal government. Of course, we started the first day with meeting with all the new ministers, or not all, but the particularly impactful ministers to municipal issues and priorities. And then, of course, the Prime Minister taking time to address our entire membership who was here. So that was wonderful.
I want to pick up on that just for a second, if you don't mind. You had the pleasure to sit down face to face with him on that stage, and all the delegates were hoping to hear something, and I think they did hear something about that renewed federal municipal relation, about having you guys as a strong partner. Are you optimistic about the future with what Prime Minister Carney has said on the stage?
Yes, I think that the Prime Minister brought a real sense of real talk and pragmatism. And so that's what we need, because that's what municipal leaders do. We don't speak high level and in the ether. We talk about on the ground and in the ground issues that are required to be city building and in community building. And I think that the Prime Minister really got that, especially being here at our annual conference at a time when decisions and programs are being developed, budgets are being put together, to really see that municipalities came out in force through the vehicle of FCM to advocate for themselves and their own home communities. And so there was just, I think, a moment, a synergy in that moment where both they got to hear from the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister got to really get a sense of what FCM's all about and how strong we are together.
A few of the key takeaways that I've noticed over the last 3 days of doing interviews with delegates is housing, infrastructure, bail reform, mental health, and addiction. Those are the key themes I'm hearing over and over again. As president, you've crisscrossed Canada. Are those the key topics that you're hearing that impact every single municipality, whether they are a major metropolitan like Vancouver or Toronto, or to the smallest community of Kyle, Saskatchewan?
Absolutely. Housing, affordable housing, which also helps tackle some of those other issues related to mental health addiction. Folks need stability. They need housing stability if they're going through treatment programs. Folks who are going through rehabilitation programs through a public safety lens also need stability and housing. So the fact that the federal government is finally back in the housing game in terms of below market units of housing, which we would call that in a Vancouver context where it's extremely unaffordable, on all measures related to housing affordability and availability. The fact that the federal government's back in the housing game to build affordable housing, I think, is music to our ears here at FCM. I've been with the organization for 8 years. I've been elected for 8 years. We have not seen enough housing being prioritized at the level that folks can afford. We're talking about the workers, we're talking about frontline responders, the teachers, the nurses, those that really hold up our communities. And so, I think that the housing piece and then the infrastructure that's needed to allow that housing to be built so that a toilet flushes, so that things work, and also infrastructure that is specific to rural. We announced our rural component yesterday. We're advocating for a specific rural infrastructure fund. And why that's important, and we really did get this through to the Prime Minister, I believe, is that we can have nation-building projects, but if once those trucks leave the ports with all those goods and products, if they can't get through our roads and our bridges without hitting a bottleneck, then we've missed a massive step in being able to build that national prosperity and economic development that's going to benefit all Canadians. So I think we've really hit the mark on some of those pieces where infrastructure links to economy, housing links to mental health and addictions, and that public safety, both on the RCMP staffing side, the funding side, also is going to impact that issue of repeat offenders and bail reform as well by addressing sort of the chronic offenders while being able to actually support folks getting back into stability. So as you can hear, everything is connected that we do at the municipal level. Everything has a thread into something else, and that's what municipal leaders bring to the table when speaking to different orders of government, provincial and federal.
You talk about the rural report that was released with yourself and Neil Como, the chair of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Rural Forum, if I'm doing that right. There seems to be a big push for rural topics at this year's convention. Why was that important? Because traditionally you wouldn't think Ottawa is the place to talk about rural communities, but it seems that at the Federation wanted to talk about rural communities this time. Why was that important for yourself and for the organization?
I think there's always been a lens on rural, but perhaps not done in a way that really lifted up the voices of our rural members. We've always known it's important internally, but it's about what we project out as well. And a real focus at this time when economic development across the country is critical, and that can't just happen in our urban centers. We need to recognize that agricultural land, energy, moving goods and services, warehousing has to happen where we have a lot of land mass, and that happens in rural. Absolutely contributes to the national prosperity picture that we recognize our country is at a pivotal time to meet that moment and build, as the Prime Minister says, build, baby, build, and we're all for that, but we can't do that if we don't invest in rural, because that is really where where the rubber hits the road in terms of resource communities, and they have smaller populations there in rural Canada, so we can't simply just rely on property tax to put that infrastructure in place that's needed to make sure that the services are where they need to be for communities, and that housing is there for workers as we grow our country in a sustainable way, which means all size communities right across coast to coast to coast.
I want to talk about the future a little bit, if you don't mind, before I let you go. And you are losing Scott Pierce, but gaining Mark Dorval. Doré. Sorry, I apologize. I just had him on.
So Mark Doré is the mayor of Dorval. So there we go.
I knew I'd get that right. Are you excited about the future with this new board? I know it's some similar faces, but you're adding Mark the mayor onto the board, or the table officers, I should say. Are you excited about what the future of FCM looks like under the new leadership of you as full president now? I'm not sure if you were interim or sort of president, but are you excited about the future? What happens next year?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Scott Pierce has been a force at FCM. We wish him very well. He's retiring from municipal politics after I don't know how many decades. We'll miss him, but I know he's happy. He's going to put up that gone fishing sign and really mean it this time. So we wish him well and thank him for his many years of service to FCM. And looking at the current table officer and also the expanded executive from that, you know, I'm very optimistic. I'm very excited. We have a hardworking team. We work together in a very unified way. We're all different, so we bring different lived experience and qualities to the table as table officers. But I also know that I can call on any of my table officers now to show up in members' communities, to do what they can. We've got each other's backs. Some of them are dealing with real emergencies in their home communities this weekend in Manitoba. Kathy Valentino, our second VP officially now. So yes, and we welcome Mayor Marc Doré as third VP, and I know he'll represent Quebec very well, the Quebec caucus, and I look forward to getting to know him better and working through this year's very ambitious advocacy agenda as we continue to build on the relationships that we started here this week with the new Prime Minister and Cabinet.
What's the advice that you give to delegates as they begin to head home? Because there's the tendency when you go to a convention that, okay, you get home and everything that you learned is just going to sit on the shelf. How do you ensure that the advocacy work that happened here, the networking that happened here as president goes on to ensure that you're not starting fresh in Edmonton in 2026?
Think of those first, 3 folks that come to mind that you met at conference. Text them, stay in touch with them, get on their social media, find ways to stay connected. Even if it's just a couple of the hundreds of people you've met, those relationships go far. They in my experience, are folks I continue to call on as a municipal leader. Learning from one another, that networking, as you say, is a critically important part. And this really is an opportunity for professional and personal development as local leaders. We're often tasked with so many different jobs. We are the jack of all trades when it comes to growing communities, and so having that sort of anchor to bounce ideas off of or just tell someone about your day is critically important, as well as continue to lean in to the FCM work, off cycle, if you will, between conferences. We have tremendous amount of tools to help smaller, larger communities make sure that they have the information they need, the data that they need to represent their communities well, and also to continue to push with their local MPs on what are some of those issues that we're carrying forward into the coming year. So I think at the end of the day, I know we're all busy, but FCM's here to support you, and any opportunity to lean in, put your hand up, let us know what you're up to and how we can connect with you and your community. That's what this next year is all about.
Final question, it's kind of a political one, but as president, you should be prepared for it. What is the benefit of a membership with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities that municipalities wouldn't get by just doing the advocacy work by themselves?
It's the theme of our conference this year. We're stronger together. And the reality is that we live in a massive country with very, very different challenges from coast to coast to coast. FCM is an incredible way for all of those different priorities and perspectives to be funneled into a united voice. And in that united voice, we have a much greater chance of connecting with the federal government on our advocacy priorities, the Housing Accelerator Fund, the Canada Community Building Fund, the Green Municipal Fund, and all the other funds and the things that we do, the Infrastructure Bank. We can advocate to CMHC. We're connecting with ministers. And what we know, and we saw that with the U.S. trade crisis this year, is that things are going to happen that we have not forecasted and planned for. So the benefit of being linked into FCM is the ability for FCM to be able to respond real time to an unanticipated urgency or crisis, and already have that membership and that relationship with FCM so that you have that voice at that table when we are advocating and showing up and have that seat at the table as a very, very significant level of government in the big picture of all orders of government to be building this country for Canadians. So we're here for our members, and so we hope that members see that the value is there for them too.
President Bligh, always a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. I feel like this is the first of many conversations over the next year. Again,
yes.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for being here, Chris.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights from all of our guests. Now, we couldn't do this show without your support. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube if you're watching us there. Now, to learn more about the communities and the people that we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.